See, they can get in really easily. I don't know why he picked the worst angle there. There we go. That's a little bit easier.
Guten Yardening, everybody! Today's yardening finance video is focused solely on a budget setup that we've created for our first 10 quail. Now, this is not our final setup, and this is certainly not the extensive video we're going to do where we detail the cost of raising quail from a startup perspective. Instead, this is going to focus on a few of the creative things that we've done to create a space that's going to be a nice space for these quail in the meantime until that cage arrives. And what we've been able to do is to source some materials from our local thrift shops and use and repurpose some of the equipment or different items that we already have around our home to create a space where these quail can be comfortable and they have plenty of room to move around as we're waiting for that new cage. Now, I want to walk you through the cost of what we've done and hopefully give you some ideas on your own so you can see you don't have to spend a lot of money to get started.
So our current budget quail setup consists of 3 cages. So we've separated out the 10 quail that we have into these 3 different cages. For now, I think this is going to be really a nice setup, especially considering the cost. Now for this setup, this cage actually didn't cost us anything because we already had this for our guinea pigs when they were young. So while this might be a $35 cage, our cost was $0. Now, as I said, this wasn't made for quail, so we had to come up with a delivery method to get them their food. And so we've taken a food-safe plastic container, one that came with food in it, and we drilled a hole into the top, and we cut a little rectangle here off to the side so they can access the food that's inside. And then from the top, we just have a little hose and a funnel up here that we pour the food down in. So we can easily refill the food here. And then we took a couple of those plastic containers that you would get from like an applesauce or one of those fruits. And you can see they've made a little mess in here, but we can fill this from the side or the top as well. We actually have 2 of them in here so they can drink as much as they need. Now again, this is a temporary setup, but all told, we already had the funnel. We already had this plastic tubing from who knows what, and this was a food package that would have been thrown out. So the cost for transition for this cage from guinea pigs to quail was a grand total of $0. Now, of course, if you don't already have pets that have a cage like we did, there may be some initial cost in buying a cage. But what we've done here, and that's exactly what we did, we repurposed 2 of these doggy trainer cages that we found at the local thrift store. It's hard for us to spend full price for something when we can find really good quality items at those thrift stores. So if I stand back from the setup a little bit, the first thing you probably notice is that there are 2 tables underneath our setup, and we have those to bring the birds closer to our light that we have up here to keep things a little bit warmer in here. Those 2 tables came from our local thrift store, and each one of them was $12.60. So that's $25.20 for the base of this setup. Now these cages are awesome. These are actually doggy trainer cages, and you can see from our local thrift store, this one was $9.99, and I don't have the price on the other one, but it was a little bit more expensive. I guess probably because it has a nice handle up here. It was $14.99. So we've got $25 between 2 of these cages, and they're a pretty good size cage. I actually just went to the store this morning and I found one of these on clearance at the store, and it was still almost $36. Now the cage is a little bit bigger than the ones that we have, but brand new, we're probably still looking at about $40 for each of these cages. And so we've got this for $25 for the 2 of them. And actually, even though this wasn't made for quail, and you might guess that the clean out of this is probably going to be a little bit more challenging than perhaps a standard quail cage, and it certainly will be, I'm sure. But what we have underneath here is a black piece of plastic. Now, if you've ever seen that on the bottom of those doggy trainers, you know that I can actually lift that up and out. So that'll be one way that we could come in here and potentially empty all of this waste material once we need to change this out. And that waste material is going to go right down here in this bin that we're going to fill up and keep, because this is outstanding compost and fertilizing material. Now, one of the other things you probably notice is this black plastic here. Now, this is something that I had to put inside of here because obviously this cage itself doesn't have anything on the sides to prevent the spread of all of this pine material that we have in here, this bedding. And believe me, they they kick things around quite a bit. So we put in this black plastic material. Now this is food safe black plastic. It costs $10 for an entire roll, and I would say I used probably a fourth of a roll at most in creating this surround. And so we're going to call that $2.50 for the underside of this cage to prevent any kind of kicking out. And one thing that's really cool is they do not attack this plastic. I think if we had guinea pigs or if we had a rabbit in here or something like that, they'd be eating all over this. But these quail, they don't bother with it whatsoever. This cage is also a lot more spacious in terms of height and width than that guinea pig cage, and so they're able to fly up a little bit more. And I think I noticed that in the cold mornings especially, they like to hop around a little bit to warm back up. Now right beside all of this is our feeding mechanism in this. Now this didn't cost us anything because this is just a container. Actually, it used to have chia seeds in it that we use in our smoothies, etc. So we know that this is a food safe container, and you can see we drilled 3 holes in this, 3 1-inch holes in this. I'll put this right back over there. And what we can do is just bring it out, take the top off, fill it up, and then they can reach in to all 3 sides. So it's a multi-feeding point that costs us absolutely nothing. It's a beauty in repurposing, is saving money and using something that would just go to waste or to recycling otherwise. Now we did buy a chicken canteen for this cage. It's the only one that we purchased that's specifically made for watering. This cost us $2.99. It was on sale. It seems to work okay, although, what I've found with all of these is they do tend to get a lot of this mess in here. But $2.99 for one of these. And I'm going to move over to our next cage now because it's almost identical. We have the same feeding setup here. Again, really easy access for 3 birds at the same time as they need it. And then we have something a little bit different right here. Now I left the sticker on this one so you can see it's $1.99, but this is our watering mechanism in this cage. This is definitely an example of good repurposing. You probably can tell what this is if you've ever seen one before. This was a bird feeder, but what I did was the same thing that I came in to drill out those containers for food. I came in and drilled out the spots where the hummingbirds would go in and made it a little bit bigger. And now the quails can reach down in here and get as much water as they want, and there's still some protection from the mess. And then what I did, it has a hook at the top, and I don't really want them pushing it over. I just took a couple of zip ties and gave this a place to hang onto, just in case they get a little bit rough with it. But the cost for everything inside here, remember we had the $2.50 for this piece of plastic, we had free for the feeding mechanism, and we had $1.99 for this watering container. Now, of course, there are other costs that are going to be associated with this, like the electricity that's going to take to run out here, the light, the pine bedding, and really the birds themselves, of course, and the feed. But I'm not going to get into that in this video. I just wanted to show you the possibilities here when you're creative in your thinking, when you think outside the box and look at what could still fit your purpose. And I got to tell you, I got a pretty creative family who can come up with some pretty innovative solutions for repurposing the things that we need.
Well, hopefully that was an enjoyable and informative experience for you, especially if you're getting started with growing quail. Now, for those of you who have been doing this for a longer period of time, we'd love to know what you think of our setup. Yes, there are some cons to it in terms of cleanup that we're going to have to deal with, but we've created something that I think could potentially work, even though we only intend for at least part of it to work in the short term. I think it could go even longer. I think it's something that is viable for what we're trying to do. So this is an initial small investment that's going to continue to work for us down the road, because we're going to find other ways to use this. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.